Hello and welcome to Horrorcast. This is episode 3. Today's account is sent to us by one of our viewers. This is a real-life first-person account. For privacy reasons, we are not going to share the name of the person and the place where it happened. We have rephrased some parts of the story to make it better for narration, but we have not changed the real horror accounts in the story, as they stay the same. So let's dive into the story. It's very interesting, and stay tuned with us until the end. I never believed in ghosts. In fact, I prided myself on my rationality. Until the night I moved into the old family estate on the outskirts of town. I had inherited the crumbling mansion from a distant uncle, and despite warnings from neighbors about its grim past, I was determined to restore it. What I hadn't anticipated was that the house had its own agenda. The drive to the mansion was long and lonesome. As I approached, the full moon cast eerie shadows over the ancient stone walls, and the wind carried soft whispers. I dismissed it as my imagination running wild after a long day of travel. I unloaded my belongings into what used to be the grand foyer, a vast, dust-choked hall lined with portraits whose eyes appeared to follow me with silent judgment. My idea behind moving here was to renovate the mansion and sell it on the market at a good price. But for that, I had to stay there for a few days to analyze how much money I have to spend and what renovations are required. The first night I set up a makeshift bed in the guest room. As I lay there in the darkness, I couldn't shake the sensation that I wasn't alone. The temperature dropped and a faint scent of decay filled the air, as if the walls themselves were rotting from inside out. I drifted into an uneasy sleep, punctuated by distant, echoing footsteps that I convinced myself were nothing more than the old house settling. Of course, it was my first night, and I wasn't feeling very comfortable here, alone. But the first encounter happened when it was nearly 3 a.m. in the morning, when I awoke to a soft weeping sound. I sat up, heart pounding, and listened. The sound came from the corridor outside my room, a mournful, disembodied sobbing that echoed against the stone. Grabbing my flashlight, I stepped out cautiously. The corridor was shrouded in darkness, and the only light came from the moon filtering through broken windows. As I passed a large, ornate mirror in the hallway, I caught a glimpse of movement behind me. A gaunt figure, draped in tattered clothes, hovering in reflection. I spun around, but nothing was there. My pulse raced as I realized the sobbing had stopped. Was it a trick of the light? I shrugged it off, attributing it to exhaustion. But as I returned to my room, I noticed something chilling. The mirror in my room now displayed an extra shadow behind my bed. I stood frozen, staring at it, as the shape slowly took form. A woman with hollow, sorrowful eyes and lips parted in silent agony. Before I could react, the figure vanished, leaving behind a lingering chill and an unmistakable scent of wet earth. That night I convinced myself that it was nothing but my own imagination. The mansion was old and rugged, and I was alone here with nobody else. And the mansion was surrounded with darkness, so I thought it's all my own imagination and my own mind creating horror scenes for me. So I shrugged it all off and went back to sleep. In the following days, the house began to reveal its many secrets. Late one afternoon, when I was exploring the east wing, I discovered a narrow passage behind a locked door. The walls of the corridor was lined with faded cryptic inscriptions and strange symbols. I felt compelled to trace my fingers over them, and as I did, I heard a soft, urgent whisper in a language I couldn't understand. That night, I lay awake in my bed, the whispers seeping into my dreams. In my sleep, I found myself wandering the corridors, each step accompanied by the sound of my own heartbeat. Suddenly, the walls on my left began to bleed. A slow, crimson drip that stained the ancient stone. I approached horrified as ghostly faces materialized within the blood. Their expressions twisted in torment. They murmured together of despair and rage that filled my mind with unbearable sorrow. I bolted upright, drenched into sweat. I couldn't tell if what I had seen was real or merely a nightmare, but the smell of iron lingered in the air, and I noticed a few dark stains on the walls that hadn't been there before. That night, I once again convinced myself that it was nothing but my own mind. Because of the stories that I've heard from the neighbors, I thought this was my own imagination, creating everything into my dreams. Now one evening, after a long day of repairs, I sat alone in the parlor, reading by the flickering light of a candle. As midnight approached, the flames sputtered and danced erratically, casting monstrous shadows on the walls. I heard a soft giggle, like that of a small child, coming from the corner of the room. I tried to convince myself it was the wind playing tricks on me, but then the giggling turned into mocking laughter that echoed around the room. I felt a sudden bone-deep cold wash over me. In the next instant, the laughter was joined by footsteps, small, rapid, and coming closer. I watched in terror as the silhouette of a little boy materialized in front of me. His eyes were dark pit, and his smile was too wide, too knowing. He pointed out at the door and whispered, "They are coming." Before I could speak, the room plunged into darkness as all the candles extinguished simultaneously. In the pitch-black silence, I felt hands, icy and instant, grasp my arms. Voices low and urgent filled my ears, speaking in a tongue that chilled my soul. I could feel my body trembling, my mind tittering on the edge of madness as I was overwhelmed by an unseen force. I couldn't make sense of the situation as I couldn't understand the language they were talking, and I couldn't tell the difference if it was just my own mind once again playing tricks on me, or if whatever was happening was real. For what felt like hours, I was trapped in that terror-filled state. When the lights finally flickered back on, I was alone, except for the tiny, eerie handprint on my arm, as if the little boy had pressed his palm against me. The next day, I went out and talked to the neighbors. As I explained them whatever had happened with me, they asked me to move out of the place, but I couldn't just leave everything behind, as the repair work was ongoing, and I couldn't just give up everything. So I mustered my courage, and I decided that I'm gonna stay here and try to finish the repair work as fast as possible. The supernatural assault did not relent. Every night brought new horrors. Doorways creaked open on their own. Cold drafts carried anguished cries, and spectral figures roamed the halls. One particularly harrowing night, I awoke to find myself in the basement, a place I hadn't dared to enter since moving in. The basement was a labyrinth of forgotten relics and ancient furniture draped in white sheets. In the dim light of a single swinging bulb, I saw dozens of faces pressed against the walls, their eyes hollow and pleading silently for release. I could not tear my gaze away as one figure emerged, a tall, robed man with eyes that burned like coals. His voice, deep and resonant, spoke directly into my mind. "You are ours now." I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive darkness. The walls closed in as ghostly hands reached for me, and I felt a surge of despair so intense that I collapsed to the cold, damp floor. I awoke the next morning on the basement floor, my clothes soaked with sweat and tears. I couldn't remember how long I had been there. and every time I closed my eyes, I saw that robed figure looming over me. Now determined to reclaim my life, I began researching the history of the mansion. Hidden in a tattered journal in the attic, I discovered the estate had once been the site of a brutal massacre. The family that once lived there was accused of practicing forbidden rituals, summoning spirits from the other side. In a fit of religious fervor, the townspeople had hunted them down, cursing the bloodline and the house with eternal torment. Their restless souls were bound to the estate, forced to relieve their anguish and seek vengeance on the living. Armed with this grim knowledge, I resolved to perform a cleansing ritual myself. That night, I gathered every scrap of information from the journal, lit every candle I could find, and recited the incantations in the trembling voice. I heard loud voices, and soon after, my fear overtook me, and I was unconscious, laying on the floor. The next day as I woke up, I ran to the nearby church. I ran immediately to the nearby church. I looked for the priest and explained him everything that had happened over the last couple days. He also knew the stories of the mansion, so he immediately agreed to help me. And he came to visit me in the evening along with another man. They lit some candles and started reciting the incantations. The house groaned in protest as a torrent of spectral energy surged around us. Shadows withered along the walls, and the very air seemed to throb with malevolent life. Then, in the midst of the chaos, we heard a voice, a clear human voice filled with sorrow and regret. It was the little boy from before, now weeping softly. "Help us," he pleaded. "Free us." In that moment, the ghostly apparitions converged on us. Their faces, once twisted in anger, were now filled with longing and despair. I felt their pain, a deep, resonant agony that threatened to shatter my mind. The robed figure appeared again, but this time his eyes were filled with remorse. "We are trapped, damned by our sins," he whispered. We continued the incantations, our voices growing steadier as we channeled every ounce of courage. Slowly, the oppressive force began to recede. The wailing ceased, and one by one, the apparitions dissolved into the night. The little boy's handprint faded from my arm, and the basement, once a theater of nightmares, fell silent. The priest warned me that although they had cleansed the house, and for the time being, these entities will not be disturbing me. But he also warned that they have been here for too long, and for too long they have been in this agony, in this pain, and that their emotions are very strong, and they're very strongly attached to this place. So although we have cleansed the house, the entities are not going to leave forever. Well, I thanked the priest for his help, and as he left, I sat in the parlor for hours after the ritual, listening to the steady tick of an old clock. Though the supernatural onslaught had abated, I knew the scars would remain. The mansion was still cursed, its walls echoing with pain of the past, but for the time being, I felt a fragile hope that perhaps with time the house could be freed from its torment. Now, as I write this email, I can still hear the whispers in the dead of the night. A reminder that some horrors never truly die. I'm left with a permanent bond to this forsaken place, a witness to its eternal sorrow. And every now and then, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can hear that mournful voice asking, "Will you help us again?" I ask all your viewers to please pray for me and pray for this cursed place and the damned souls that are trapped inside. This was my detailed account. There were many small instances that I did not mention, as writing this email is already very overwhelming for me. So thank you very much for your story. This was really a very chilling account, and I hope things get better with time. I would also like to thank all the viewers and listeners for watching this video and staying with us until the end. I would also like all the viewers to please pray for this person and this haunted house and the souls that are trapped inside. May they find light and may everything get better for this person. I would like to once again thank all the viewers for listening to the story and watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with your friends and family. And also please drop your comments down below as we are waiting for your feedback. Thank you once again very much for watching, and until next time.